This video is sponsored by Chakra 17. Awaken your vitality with our anti-aging coffee.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. We have with us a very special guest, retired Army veteran, Mr. Thomas J. Lennox, who is joining us. This is a gentleman that was brought to us by fellow friend Derek Johnson, highly recommended, and we're honored to have him today. We're going to be discussing a number of subject matters, primarily on the geopolitical and financial side. So please take notes. This gentleman has a treasure trove of experience that he's going to offer us in some untapped areas that have not been widely discussed and some that have. So we're going to be getting his insights in that today. If you're new to the podcast, once again, please do like, subscribe, and hit the share button so that others can gain in the knowledge you're currently being afforded. As is customary with first-time guests, we are going to read some of his bio because it's quite extensive, giving his pedigree. So we're going to just kind of go through the finer touch points of said bio. He served in Vietnam from 1969 to 1970 as a medical supply and equipment distribution officer for the 32nd Medical Depot, again for the U.S. Army. He was deputy logistics operations in Berlin, military comptroller training with background MBA from Syracuse University, a budget officer for Corps Support Command. He led an organization of 1,500 personnel, reserve officer training, instructor under Oklahoma State University, budget development for U.S. Army logistics globally with a $1 billion a year annual budget. Program manager, he led a team of 20 former military in the development of new technologies for the management and control of U.S. Army assets. He was involved with the Department of Defense, highly qualified expert, senior executive service equivalent, expertise in logistics, military finance. He was also a senior advisor for two major Army IT project specialists. He conducted risk and deployment asset assessments, of four major IT innovators, developed the Department of Defense 15 end-to-end business processes, also a senior analyst consultant, author of the document which resulted in the creation and installation management command for the U.S. Army. And he has a BSBA in accounting, MS in general business, and again, an MBA in military controllership. So he has quite a bit of extensive experience, both in military, both in service and operations, as you can tell. And he has a lot to offer in that way as regards to the global reset and components thereof, which we'll be discussing in a moment. So, Mr. Thomas Lennox, thank you for joining the podcast, sir. How are you doing today?
Good. It's a nice day here in Washington, D.C. area. Bright and sunny, about 60 degrees.
Nice. Did I do okay with your background? Was that fairly commensurate? Okay. Okay. I want to make sure I represented you duly, sir. Okay. So first thing I want to talk about, Tom, it was in our briefing for the podcast when we did some of the production work here. You have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas, as I sort of touched on, too numerous to list, but you have something in the area of an untapped market of the financial component, which has to do with respect to the St. Germain's Trust. We haven't really talked about that a lot on our podcast because we haven't really had anybody who's been versed enough to discuss it, but you do. So would you kind of kick things off, sir, with that discussion and just how robust and wide and deep that actual trust is?
Okay. St. Germain Trust has been kept hidden from the public for years and years and years. It's got multi-hundreds of trillions of dollars in the trust. It's how Nesara and Gesara will be funded out of the St. Germain Trust. The amount, if you took it into another range, would be in the quadrillions of dollars. Most people don't have any idea what a quadrillion is, and I'm not even going to try and explain it. It is funded with gold and other assets. It's been around quite a long time. It relates to everybody's birth certificate. All of our birth certificates have been sold on the market for years and years and years. Don't want to estimate how much money people are worth because that's unrealistic. But the reality is the St. Germain Trust can fund all of those people's money globally, not just in the US. Let's see what else we got. I didn't expect this as the first question, but that's okay.
Well, I just thought we'd start top down and, go
Yeah.
from there.
Well, the amount of money is huge. And some have said there's enough to provide 8 billion people $1 million each, which is a huge amount of money. You're not going to hear about it much. It's hard to find information about. The last comment I saw was, if you're looking to find it on CNN, you'll never find it there.
Absolutely. So, Tom, let's take it down and dissect that because it's a very large vat, a very large tranche. The question I know is going to come up invariably, and understandably always does, is two things. As much of a, I'm going to say realistically, but as much as a measured timeline as you can give, when would people be able to anticipate seeing that? I imagine it'll be rolled out over a period of time because of its sheer volume. And two, if they're trying to get access to their birth certificate, is there a way for people to do that?
There is a way to get access to your birth certificate, and I've never paid much attention to the numbers, but there's a number at the bottom of your Social Security card. It's not your Social Security number, it's another number, and that number will allow you to have access to your trading on the stock market. And it'll give you some idea of what kind of money you have, or you have potentially have. And I've heard people who have done it. I have not done it. I don't choose to do that kind of stuff. But I've heard people who've done it saying it's well in excess of $100 million a person. But who knows? We really don't know. The birth certificate itself, I have one good friend who on the back of his birth certificate, it says property of the Vatican. Believe it or not. If you can get an original copy,
you
can find that. And he has the original copy of his birth certificate. So that tells you that the birth certificate itself, if we go back to 1917 to 1919, when Woodrow Wilson was in office, he's the one who approved the creation of the birth certificate for every person. The birth certificate itself, if you look at your driver's license or any other official document, everything will be in all caps. And the reason for that is because that is your shadow personality or shadow person. It is what creates slavery in all of us. And the way they did that was, and we're going to jump now. I want to do a little bit of history. I don't know how much history people have.
Please.
In 1871, the United States became a corporation. There are 3 seats that control the corporation: Washington, D.C., London. D.C. is the military, London is the money, the Vatican is the spiritual and the director. If you go back further and you study the Vatican, you find out that the Pope is actually Caesar, the Holy Roman Empire. But that's a different story for a different day. So in 1871, we created Washington, D.C. and the corporation. We jump to 1913, actually 1912. 1912, the Titanic sank. There were 4 people on the Titanic who refused to go along with the creation of the Fed and the IRS. Those 4 people died in the Titanic. The rumor is they were shot before the Titanic sank. That's the rumor. That would not be officially showing up anywhere. So the leftover people from the group that wanted the IRS and the Fed created the IRS and the Fed. The IRS was allegedly the 16th Amendment to the US Constitution. Reality is it was never approved. The Fed was created as a private corporation run by the banks, not run by the federal government. So the Federal Reserve is owned and operated by the bankers. And the bankers were the ones who created it so they'd have access. So shortly after that, they started taxing at 7% on the wealthy. World War I started, they said they would temporarily tax all the people. Absolute lie. They never took that tax off. Then one genius working for Woodrow Wilson said, let's create the birth certificate. So they created the birth certificate. Now they could track everything you do with your birth certificate and your social security number created in the 1930s by Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his people. So now you've got the birth certificate, the social security number, and you can now tax the people indiscriminately, having gotten up as high as 77% tax. And we jumped forward and we went to fiat money. The Federal Reserve created money, allegedly backed by gold and silver. In 1963, John F. Kennedy said, we're going to go to a silver certificate and all of the currency will be based on silver. He was killed 6 months later by those who did not like the idea that we're going to go to silver. They say it was the CIA. I don't worry about those things. I just know he was killed because he was going to change us to silver. In the early 1970s, Nixon took us off the gold standard. Jumping backwards in the 1930s, Roosevelt had taken all the gold away from all the people, made it illegal to hold gold, and all that gold was taken away. We jump forward a little bit further, and we have Nesara passed as a law by Bill Clinton. And we look at 9/11. The next day, 9/12, we were supposed to go into Nesara. Oh, gee, I wonder what happened. Let's see, where am I? Okay, so Nesara has been law on the books since Bill Clinton's presidency. In 1985, and I'm jumping backwards a little bit.
That's fine.
A letter was written by the chairman of the IRS commissioner, that states the amendment to the Constitution was never passed. We have been illegally collecting taxes. In fact, I sent you a copy of that if you want to provide it to people. And he said, if somebody comes in and wants all the taxes they ever paid back, then we should give them that money but I want you to throw this letter away after you get it, all my division chiefs. This letter was found by Edward Snowden, who allegedly was a traitor. I say allegedly because he worked a deal with the Russians. So this is the letter that was sent to all the IRS commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing ever happened with it. So from 1985 on, people still get prosecuted for not paying taxes and all that, those related things. If you look in the first part of the IRS manual, it says taxes are voluntary.
Correct.
They're not required to be paid. Because the US Constitution states that I can't be taxed. And not only can't I be taxed by the feds, but I also can't be taxed by the states because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So when we look at this taxation issue, we're looking at something that's illegal, that all of the money you ever paid in income taxes should be refunded to you. And that's how they can do it, is with the St. Germain Trust. That gives them the capability to do that. Now we go all the way up to today, October 1st, we went to a shutdown of the US government. That shutdown, they claim, is because they couldn't agree on a continuing resolution, which is another whole story.
Yeah, right.
But the reality is that the IRS, they have laid off 70,000 IRS agents. The 97 of the 209 countries that are signed up to the Nesara, Gesara, their central banks are gone. There's another 82 being worked on right now. The IRS runs out of money sometime between the 5th and the 10th of October. Okay.
Yep.
So when we start to look at it, we can see that Trump is actually going back to the original Constitution, supreme law of the land. And if you remember, he's talked about property taxes. He's talked about income taxes, and he's talked about the tax, the 14% tax on new purchases as funding for the government. So when we look at what's going on today, we can see that things are moving very rapidly. I heard some things today that I can't even remember all of the things that have happened. But I do know the IRS is virtually gone. They're going to be assigned, the people that are left are going to be assigned to the new 14% tax plus the tariffs. The Fed has been essentially gone since probably around 2018, 2019. We have all these big announcements. The Fed's going to raise the rate, lower the rate. Yeah, but it doesn't matter because the fiat currency is going to disappear. And the fiat currency will disappear sometime in the near future. We can't predict a date, but the gold-backed currency has already been printed. The 209 countries where we're going to trade at 1 ounce of gold for 1 ounce of gold worldwide. So when you're doing trade, instead of one guy's got a $20 to an ounce, the other guy's got $10 to an ounce, and or your dollar bills are trading at one level and their currency's at another level, then it takes 1,000 yen to buy a dollar, something like that. That's not going to happen. The part of the financial thing is that it's dollar to dollar. If you have an ounce of gold and he's got an ounce of gold, that's how you're going to trade. 1-to-1.
Yeah, parallel,
Totally.
absolutely. Thank you,
Yeah.
Tom, for that overview. I appreciate it. So I want to add a couple of things to a lot of the important points that you made, because we're blessed to have a very educated and a self-sufficient audience that really wants to learn and grow and stretch,
Yeah.
and you likewise. So you're instrumental in this process. So thought I would offer a couple of musings for you to support your points. I know two people specifically. You're talking about the QSIP number on the bottom of the Social Security card.
Right.
So I have two people who have tested this. We'll call it an experiment. It's not really a research. They found that their birth certificates were worth somewhere between 3.3 to 5 billion. They also have fidelity accounts going to all their Treasury Direct bonds, as well as any 401ks that they've amassed, which is how the bonds all amalgamate. I know you know, so I'm talking to my audience. They found in both instances that those Treasury Direct / 401ks and their Fidelity or whatever company they worked with were in the multiple billions. So I believe President Trump is worth about 12 billion just on his portion alone. So if you take him as a basis of comparison, even if the average person is whatever it is, $6, $7, $8 billion, it's multitudes. So that feeds into your discussion about the St. Germain's Trust and just how wide and vast and deep this thing really is that people don't yet know. They're going to find out. It's pretty amazing. So let's talk about, you've talked about the St. Germain.
One
Go ahead.
side thing. I'm
Please.
80 years old. My number is probably up there close to Trump's.
I'm sure it is.
Because he and I are a year apart.
Right, that's true. Yeah, that's if you use that as a basis, you're probably right. So kudos, and you've earned it with your pedigree of experience. So we talked about the birth certificate. We talked about the St. Germain. I'm just going off my notes, so bear with me.
Okay.
You've talked about the IRS and the Federal Reserve, a bit of the history. So I'm going over our touch points. So I wanted to talk at the St. Germain top down because I think that tells the conversation of all the other aforementioned items, which you've done well. So let's take the next step. With everything that you've shared, in your estimation, Tom, how will the world be able to go to asset-backed currency based on gold and silver, platinum, copper? You see what he's doing, President Trump in Alaska, tapping all those untapped resources that we knew were always there. How much gold and silver do we actually have versus what we've been told?
When Trump, if you remember, Trump did a tour. He went to Saudi Arabia, he went to Israel, he went to the Vatican. While he was at the Vatican, he gave the Pope one day. The Pope capitulated in one day, and they flew 650 airplanes. You won't hear a lot of this today because this is what I learned 5 years ago. They flew 650 airplane loads of gold out of the Vatican. The estimated value at that time was $26 quadrillion. Just that gold. It's now probably close to $50 quadrillion. The price of gold going up the way it has. They have been working with, there are 12 senior Chinese that control the gold in China. And there's gold in other countries. And there's diamonds in the ground. And there's silver in the ground. And I heard an estimate the other day that there's $150 trillion worth of gold in one small African country's ground. So there's plenty of money. There's plenty of gold. There's not as much silver
Right.
but silver has been underpriced. It went over $52 today, an ounce.
Yep. And it's going to continue to go up, as you know.
And it's going to continue to go up. There's some who are saying it will go up and match gold.
Yeah.
And
particularly when there's a finite supply of it, as you said.
yeah. And because silver and the gold are what all the countries are going to use. Now, well, they're going to use silver, gold, platinum,
Palladium,
and probably diamonds and other
copper.
things. They've got assets.
Mm-hmm.
They've been stolen assets.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at it, there's plenty of money to take care of everybody. We will have abundance at some point. By abundance, I mean everybody will be comfortable. They won't be paying any taxes. Their governments will be much smaller. They say that during this lockdown, that they're going to reduce the federal government, I think, by at least 50%. They talk about 95%. It's hard for me to imagine. You hear that on the various podcasts.
Right.
But it's going to be a significant drop in the size of the government. When you look at the Constitution, there are really only 5 agencies, 4 or 5, I think it's 5 agencies that are authorized under the Constitution. Everything else is excess, which is a very interesting. Everything else is supposed to be done by the states that the federal government has taken over. And if we look at the 1871, the corporation, and we look at now, within the next couple of weeks, we'll be under the Republic, fully under the Republic. All those laws passed by the corporation are not constitutional. So we have some interesting times coming from that perspective,
to say the least.
And I look at it and think about it, and I say, okay, that's going to take more than a day or two. But when we look at Nesara, Gesara, everything I hear is it's not too far away. Pieces will come. It won't come all at once.
Right.
But pieces are already starting to fall into place. No more IRS. Oh, you're going to give me all my money back?
Yep.
It's an assumption you could make that they're going to give you all your money back at some point. When? And I don't want to guess.
Sure. Yeah, because we need a way to bridge the gap with the people who are, because I already can tell the people, some people are watching, well, I don't have any money right now. I don't have this. I'm in a bad place. And that's understandable. Everybody's in a different situation. I know you can sympathize. So we need a way to bridge the gap for those people in that, slide right now to help, prop them up as we, get to the other side. Moving to the Rubicon and the other side of it. You're absolutely right. I think you look at the shutdown, I looked at the numbers again to support your point. I think it's closer to 100,000 IRS agents. I want to show you a video real quick, Tom. I shared the document that you gave me with the audience while you were talking. Just to save time, I want to show you something that supports what you were talking about. So just bear with me a second here. This was sent to me by one of my team members, John G., that our audience knows affectionately well. This is a gentleman named WR, I hope it's saying it right, Shock, on X. And this reporter is talking about this gentleman sister works at the IRS. She called him to say it was her last shift. And Tom, to your point, they quote, closed the door. So I'm going to play this video and then we'll come back with my next question, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Let me just play this. Let me cue this up here real quick. I want to make sure the sound is right. Okay, there we go. And take a quick listen, sir.
So nobody is talking about this, and that's because they don't want people to know. Y'all, the IRS just quietly closed its doors, and the only reason why I know about it is because my sister works there, and she called us to let us know that she just worked her last shift. She told me that they were supposed to stay open till around the 15th or until funding got sorted. Remember, Congress is trying to find a way to fund the government right now. But today, after her last shift, click, they locked the doors. So here I am scouring the internet to find some videos for you guys. I can't find one legit videos, no media coverage whatsoever. I just come across this one guy. He's an IRS agent who's helping his client file some taxes, and the surprise on his look when he came up to the building, find out they were closed, y'all, priceless. So something is going on out there that people don't want us to know, y'all. The IRS just shut down.
Good morning. Here's today's update from your Super Agent Logan. I'm down here at the IRS helping out one of my clients that needs some extra paperwork done, and we're having issues getting people on the phone. I know the IRS was open yesterday if you came down in person, but as of today, as of 5 a.m. this morning, the IRS is officially closed. So if you have any transactions that you're working with the IRS on, or if you have any personal things you're working with on the IRS, they are closed. So be patient as the government figures out what they're going to do and opens back up.
Now, I don't know what's going on out there, but all of these major hands of the government shutting down the same time that the government is shutting down and they can't figure out what's going on, y'all, something big is around the corner. And then I just found out that there's a lot going on in Washington, D.C. that people aren't speaking of as well. I'm gonna come back and do another video on that. But did y'all know this, y'all? The shift is here. I've been telling y'all. I follow Chef for more videos like this. Let me know what you guys think about it.
Okay, so we're going to take that out of that, Tom. And that just, reinforces the point of what we've known for a while, which you've already shared. It's just great confirmation. So I want to talk something about you and I talked about, Tom, in our briefing that is very important. It's equally important to the St. Germain Trust because, as you know, everything correlates and goes hand in hand. You have some great information that has been a great source of consternation for a lot of people out there in our audience and in just the global construct of truthers. There's all this back and forth about we can't talk about the IRS and not talk about the banks who are in cahoots, the Rockefellers, the Great Taking and Creature of Jekyll Island, 1912, you're well healed familiar with. So I've had the dubious joy of reading that book. For me, it was like War and Peace Finances. It was very involved and I learned quite a bit. So the issue is people are worried about banks and the bail-ins and removal of their money. And if we have this reset, the bank's going to steal our money. But you have some information that suggests strongly that that's not the case. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes. QFS, the quantitative financial system, has a mirror of every bank account for every person globally. What that mirror means is that the banks are going to go away as we know them because they're all crooks. And I could talk endlessly about that. But what's going to happen is QFS has the mirror, all the money necessary to replace whatever was in the bank accounts is in QFS. Gold-backed, globally. So what will happen is maybe for a couple of days, people won't have access to their money, but they'll go in and they'll meet with a representative. And at that time, if they have any cash, they'll convert their cash into the gold-backed currency, and they will get their account, which will be on a phone not like any phone that they have right now. That phone will have all of their money on it, plus potentially a lot of the money that's coming back from the IRS and their accounts. We don't know how much anybody's going to have, but they will get a phone at that meeting. The phones have already been produced. They were produced 3 years ago. There's 8 billion phones. That's from people who were saying stuff 3-4 years ago that now they can't say because they've got NDAs.
Right.
But I heard that probably 4 years ago. But the phones will come to you. That phone will have all your money on it. The only person who can use that phone is you for your money, because you will have a biometric access to your phone. Your family won't know what's in it. You as an individual will know what's in it. And that phone becomes your way to transact money, to move money. If you get deposits from various retirement accounts, it goes into that phone in QFS. So maybe for a couple of days, you won't have access to your bank account. I tell people have as much money as you possibly can in cash,
Mm-hmm.
because your credit cards are going to disappear.
Right.
But that phone and the QFS is very interesting. People always assume that some company built software. QFS is a different animal. It's being built with technology that we don't know. You and I don't know. And that technology is, if you're a criminal, you're not going to have any money because it's going to be gone and not come back. If you're doing transactions that are illegal with that QFS phone, they'll turn it off. They turn it off, you don't have any money. That's for the criminals.
Right.
So the phone itself is a very powerful instrument, and it will be fingerprint, eye tracking you as an individual with your eyes. That's the only way it can be opened.
Right.
Your eyes and your fingerprint.
Right. The biometric, like you were saying. So when we had our pre-brief meeting, thank you, Tom. When we had our pre-brief meeting, you mentioned to me a very important statistic. You're saying that there's strong evidence to support that this month, at some particular date that we don't, sometime in the window of this month, roughly 90% of the banks out there will be controlled or contained from doing any bail-ins. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And how did you get that?
Number. And we know that 97% of the central banks are gone. The banks in the US are all dependent upon the Fed.
Mm-hmm.
The Fed's no more.
Right.
So those banks, they're going to convert their people to financial advisors, because a lot of people are going to need a financial advisor of some sort. So, and they've been doing it for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Certain banks, I've heard, I don't deal with those banks. I deal with a credit union. But certain banks, you can find out what they're doing, because the managers will kind of admit, yeah, there's a problem, but they're not going to tell you. But they're going to all be converted to some kind of financial advisor roles. That's my understanding. Now, it may be that they'll exist and you can run your computer or your phone in and get money out of them or something. Don't know.
Well, for your edification, Tom, I've said to my audience for years, I've shown them actual banks within the constructs of where I live that have, because California is not that I'm from here, not that I'm from here, but I'm just saying California's always been progressive in terms of fashion and finance and other things. And so 2 years ago, my Wells Fargo major branch here for wealth management advisors, as you said, converted. And I showed pictures of that to that testament of that fact. So I've already talked to wealth managers, and even, there's a difference, Tom, I'm talking to my audience at this point, between a wealth manager and a private banker. Because wealth managers usually deal with 250,000 or more FDIC capping. Private bankers, it's usually 10 million and up. So you have a lot of Saudis and those contingents that have money, and they can buy a car or a house and just have it literally delivered to them, just like that. And we're going to have those abilities and I'm not going to call them privileges, they're rights, but those access points going forward. So that's very important what you shared about the banks. Thank you for that, because I really want to move forward because I want to respect your time. Being that you have such a robust background in military, you're the perfect person to talk about this. Can you explain to the audience why the majority of the military can never pass an audit?
Multiple reasons. The military receives a budget. The budget is in either 1 or 2 year increments. Some of it's 3 and 4 year increments, 5 years. Depends on what they're buying. So you have that, and then you have a financial accounting, cash accounting, separate system. So you're actually maintaining 2 ledgers. Now, that's 2. Then you have what they call, my brain just went.
No problem.
When they fund to buy parts, etc., they have a separate funding stream. So they go out and buy them with that separate funding stream, and then they come back in, and then they buy them with the budget, and they track it with this accounting system. That's the biggest problem, is you've got multiple different kinds of money. If I look at it, there are probably 10 to 15 different categories of money. You have the procurement dollars to buy the tanks. You have the operational dollars to buy the parts for the tanks. You have the financial payment for the soldiers. And a given soldier may have 5 different sources of money. One soldier got a housing, he's got a food, he's got combat pay, he's got flight pay, he's got TDY pay, all of those things. So auditing just the people side is huge. Now, the financial system can't keep track of the equipment that's in the logistics system. And you have in the logistics system, we'll talk about equipment, they have changed what equipment gets reported on the books. I think it's now up to $250,000 and above is reported on the books, but the accounting systems can't track it. It can only be tracked in the logistics systems. So if I go in to audit you in a commercial sense, I have a standard ledger, cash, accounts receivable, equipment, property, it's all there. In the military, you don't have that. And you can't get there from here because they don't have a system capable of dealing with the amount of money they've got. You know, if you look at $750 billion, spread out over numerous organizations. And then you have things like black money, classified projects. You have 5 DLA depots, which is Defense Logistics Agency, and all it does is sell parts. And their procurement system is XYZ. You've got for example, the Army, they do 4,000 contracts a year. If you think about 4,000 contracts, now I get a contract for 1 year in July. So it runs to the next July. Cash transaction following how much cash I have is almost impossible, because that company might decide, well, we can't spend it all this year. We're going to give you a no-cost extension. So that cash for that no-cost extension comes out of what was put in the contract originally. I have no idea. I was a project manager for a while. I was a budget officer for a while. As a project manager for a commercial firm, I was spending 1993 money in 1997. How are you going to audit that? The accounting system they bought for the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, all 3 of them, the accounting systems can't track the equipment and the inventories. They can't track how much property they own. They had whole offices in DOD trying to figure out how much property DOD owns. They've got environmental liabilities that nobody knows how big they are. They're huge because they can't find 5,500-gallon fuel tanks. Can't find them. Don't know where they are. But somebody knows where they are. But you go out and try and audit that. So the challenge is the Corps of Engineers can be audited because the Corps of Engineers is like a commercial corporation. The rest of it is virtually impossible. And in fact, they had a budget, head of the comptroller for DOD said, if you can track the budgetary expenses and the equipment, you should be passing the audit. I was a senior advisor on accounting system and a logistics system, 2 separate systems based on the same software, but if you turn certain switches on in software, they can't marry. They can't talk to each other. They had 13 issues, unsolvable issues in the financial side of the Army's financial system. Unsolvable issues. They were hiring consultants to figure out how, if I'm paying somebody out of this pocket of money and this pocket of money, what do I do? If I want to track people costs, I have people that move, thousands of people move daily from one organization to another. Commercially, I have all my people, they stay in the same building. Maybe I lose 5% a year, but I don't have 100% turnover every year. Doesn't happen. So that gives you some kind of a summary of why they can't pass an audit. It's not realistic to expect when McNamara put in the planning, programming, and budgeting system. It's very neat. You can track the budget, but you can't track all the other stuff you're supposed to track in an accounting system that's auditable. That's a summary.
No, I appreciate it. The first thought I had, Tom, as you were sharing, is it sounds a lot like the dichotomy between the U.S. corporation and the U.S. Constitution.
Exactly.
They don't talk to each other, because they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I'm gonna bunch stack these last two questions I have for you, because everything correlates, and I think these correlate nicely as well. So because of your extensive military background, because of your cogency of knowledge with the financial system, and again, how everything correlates, you have access to knowledge that people have on a cursory level, but you can obviously take it in a lot more granular. So no secret, we've been lied to, manipulated in every capacity of our life. I think that's well healed and established, by our audiences at this point. You and I talked a lot about med beds, Space Force, Trump's new initiatives, not new, they're new to the normies, but, established behind the scenes for a while. And that involves a lot of different things, to include what we're going to call off-world activity. So I'm going to show a video here that supports what you're going to talk about. And then I'm also going to ask you to talk about, after you watch this, why did the cabal destroy the bells that we see in churches and cathedrals during the wars? Because that plays a role in, I think, the previous discussion. So let me just pull this up here real quick, Tom, and I'm going to show this to our audience. I will have you address both the bells and the off-world capacities, if you like. Bear with me one second here.
You received intelligence that suggests that there are perhaps deep water alien bases right now sitting on the ocean floor on this planet. Is that accurate?
I would say that's pretty accurate.
Can you go into more detail? How long have they been here? Where are they?
Well, I'm extrapolating all this with my East Tennessee vernacular. So we've got five or six deep water areas of our oceans. We actually know more about the surface of the moon than we do about these areas. And these are areas where we have a high frequency of UFO or UAP sightings. We've had naval folks have told me pretty high up that they've actually tracked these things. Now, we have stuff that can go underwater probably 30 to 40 miles an hour, maybe something a little faster that the Chinese haven't stole from us yet. And we've tracked things big as a football field going 200 miles an hour. Now, I realize in the water you extrapolate that to knots and all that, but just for good old East Tennessee common sense, 200 miles an hour is something the size of a football field. And we don't know what it is. And these are in these areas. So, yeah, there's something going on there. And whether it's something that's been here for millennial or whatever, and I'm not afraid of it. I'm kind of like Dr. Loeb. I love to study this kind of stuff. It's the scientific material there he's the one that disclosed some things that were found that were extraterrestrial in our oceans. And, he's brave enough, I believe, to come forward with those. So I'm looking forward to some more talks about this, but I think I've kicked the hornet's nest, because it was just in a casual conversation with a blogger, and I discussed it. It wasn't in a classified setting, so I could talk about it. But I always remember the last thing this one high-ranking official told me as he left my office. He was right close to me as I am to my phone in my barn right now, and he said, "Tim, they're real."
So, Tom, talk about that, if you would, please. Talk about the church bell manipulation of frequency, and when will the general public, like Nesara, get great disclosure about off-planet activity?
Okay, so the first part of the question is about
The church bell frequencies.
Okay.
Yeah.
The churches from a generic standpoint, were all designed to be healing centers. And the bells create a frequency that would heal people of illness. So you didn't go to church to listen to some preacher. You went to church because of the bells and the pipe organs. Because the bells and the pipe organs, frequencies can heal people. And there were people, and I'm going to jump back to In 1930s, there was a doctor who discovered that with the right frequency, you could kill cancer. All of a sudden, he disappeared because they didn't like that. But the bells, they claimed it was because they needed the steel or iron or whatever the bells are made of. The reality was that they were healing centers for people. The church bells heal people with the frequencies. If you study frequencies and vibration, you can find out that we are all a frequency and we all vibrate. And the bells help the cells to do what the cells do to heal us. And that's why they took all the bells out, because they didn't want the healing centers, because they wanted Big Pharma to make a lot of money. That's pretty straightforward, but it's absolutely true.
No, absolutely. No, frequencies have always been the key. You're 100% right about that. And then you saw the video we talked about with Rep. Tim Burchett of Tennessee, a really good guy. It seems like more and more like the med beds were disclosed. Well, the iteration of them to the public, the discussion, beginning pieces, with Caroline Levitt last week in the press corps. You saw that, I'm sure, a little over a week ago.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing this. Again, dates are fluid and all that, but timelines. When would you ascertain that the public is going to start becoming aware of the disclosure of alien life activity?
That's a tough one, because understanding that there's a galactic federation that's been in existence for millennia, and that the majority of the galactics, they have people that are spiritual, they have people that are technology, they have people that are healing. They're whole societies that do various things. And then understanding that we believe there are people on the other side of the ice wall in Antarctica that are galactic, and that the technology used in creating the QFS probably came from an off-world source, technology-wise. We have, working with the Alliance, and I've heard it numerous times, the Palladians. And the Palladians have ships that fly around up above us. They do not do anything to change our thought processes. They're there, and as we move up in dimensions as individuals, we will see them. They walk our streets. But we will not. We have people that are called starseeds that were actually put on the planet as part of our reawakening. I saw something just today, twice, two different sources, that our DNA, when fully connected, we can go back thousands of years in time. It's inside of us. But they've done enough to block our DNA, block our pineal gland, that our communication ability with the Palladians and there's Arturians and is very difficult. The bad guys here on Earth, the evil ones, tend to be reptilians.
Mm-hmm.
And you can occasionally see somebody shapeshift on TV because they happen to be a reptilian and they hit some word or something and it causes them to. So, and the reptilians are tied to the deep state, as we call it. I don't know when people will be willing to accept that there is something called the Galactic Federation, generally good guys that are trying to make sure that we on Earth join them. There are rumors that Trump was off world for considerable amount of time when Biden was allegedly the president. There are also people who say we have bases on the moon and Mars already. But when the general public is going to get it, that's hard, because it's going to be really hard for people to understand that there are humanoids in our galaxy. There are humanoids in other galaxies. We think we're the Earth and that's it. And we've been convinced that it rotates. And if you do the numbers, there's no way it can rotate. But that's okay. That's a different story too.
Right.
But I'm going to guess that it'll be sometime next year that it'll start showing up in the news. The deep state has been claiming that aliens are going to invade. No, the aliens that would invade are already here. They're the reptilians. My wife has been into this for quite a long time, the off-world. And she and I have been to conferences. We didn't find them of value. But there are people who have been dealing with off-world for many, many years. Probably 100 years. They say that Tesla got all of his technology from off-world. They say he created a time machine. But he scared people because he said free energy should be there. So anyway, when I believe that the QFS was developed in association with the off-worlders, and that it was done that way because they had technology we didn't have. That's why Trump can say, we know it all.
Right.
And
Well, you know as well as I do, not to interrupt, that he's a time traveler. He's gone backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
That's why he can go in the future, stop, he knows it's coming, come back and undo it.
he's
I
done
guess,
it.
sorry, go ahead.
The QFS is not just financial. When you vote, you're going to vote with that phone.
Right.
That phone is going to be tied to the education system. Very interesting.
Quantum learning. Yeah.
The quantum phone. Yeah. So it's all going to come together.
I think you're right about next year, because I had a guest, I have a monthly guest on who we respected a lot, who has great information like yourself, complimentary, who had poignantly said to me, Tom, months ago, by 26, everybody will know the truth. Whether they accept it or not is an entirely different matter, but they'll know the truth by next year. Go ahead.
I talk about accepting. People claim that there are a lot of people that are awake. I would say that 5 to 10% maybe are really awake. There may be 30% who feel something, with that 5 and 10 in the 30%. 70% they might be Trump supporters, they might not be Trump supporters, but they really don't have a feel for it. And the reason I say that is I play a lot of golf. And the people I play golf with are Trump supporters, but they don't have a clue as to what's going on. And every once in a while, I'll bring up something like the other day. I said, God created something to heal everything wrong with you. You don't need the pharmacy. You should see the look, because the pharmacy never heals.
Yeah, right. Never intended to. Never intended to. I think as we close up for today, Tom, one of the concerns that some people have, and I wanted you to address it because I think you're in a position, given your military robust background and your post-military, I'm sure when you worked in the military, you had questions and suspicions about things that did not add up. It just didn't arrive today. You said to me in our pre-meeting that for 30 years you've been kind of tracking this. So I think a concern that some might have with respect to the med beds, I think most people are excited about them, anticipating them, but some of the concern I've heard from a small consensus is, if there is off-world activity with that, and we surmise there is, given the AI component, is there going to be a restructuring of people's DNA manipulation? Because you said that the Palladians are not trying to, program us. We don't have to worry about that. Our government spent decades to try to do that successfully. To your previous point, should people be concerned about if they step into a med bed, DNA be altered, or is the military, the good side of the military, controlled enough of that contingency and component?
It's going to be 100% controlled by the military. My understanding is that they have completed a significantly large number of med bed facilities around the country and the world.
Yeah.
The med bed, if it does anything with your DNA, it will reconnect your DNA to its full capabilities. In fact, I just heard that today as I follow all kinds of things. But I did hear that today, that your DNA has been disconnected by the deep state on purpose.
Sure.
When I met I'm going to tell you a little story. When I met my wife, she's my second wife. When I met Crystal, the first date was 12 hours long, 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 3 o'clock in the morning. I went for a walk the next morning, probably closer to noon, but because I'm retired. And while I was walking, I was told that Crystal was my wife 3,000 years ago, and that I was killed in Alexander's army, and she was left without me. And I was killed with a poison arrow. Now, that's 3,000 years ago. It's the only real thing that's come to me. And so I told her that. And she looked at me funny. Well, we're married now, and I don't think we've had more than 2 or 3 days when we didn't see each other since the first date. But if you think about that, and you think about the fact that that piece came to me from my inner God and my DNA, then we do have the capability to go back and see how far back our soul carries, because our soul never dies.
It's the term old souls, right? We've been here a long time. More than
Yep.
we know. More than we know.
We come back in different
Iterations.
We come back by choice
Mhm.
in a certain iteration, or we just come back. But anyway,
That's
so
interesting.
the med bed will fix what's broken in your DNA. The challenge for people is going to be, it's more about, are you spiritually ready for it? Not can it do it what it does, because it
Right.
works with your spirit.
Yeah. Mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, your mindset. We've talked about that in the audience quite a bit.
Mindset's your spirit, and your spirit is your spirit.
Mhm.
It's not about the church. It's not about somebody else. It's about your spirit.
Mhm.
What's in here and what's in here. The combination.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Going to the med beds, they can take 30 years off your life. I'm 80, I could be 50 years old.
50, actually, I think they can take it even further than that from what I've read.
Yeah, but they can do it 2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Either way, it's exciting, my
the
friend.
technology works. I heard a story about a guy who was literally destroyed in combat. And his wife said he was really just a shadow of himself.
Mhm.
And the military has been testing the med beds. She said he went to the med bed center and he almost like crawled in. He was so weak, his legs, his whole body. He came out of there and he can play with their kids. He can do almost everything that he did before he went in the military. So the med beds are a good thing. And you can start by understanding that your genes heal, your body can heal itself. If you focus on self healing, when you go to the med beds, you're just going to go, and that's all spiritual as well.
Yeah.
You can tell that when I get down to the nitty gritty, I talk about the spirit because that's important for everybody. And that's why I say there's a lot of people who are going to struggle with the change. Change is a long process.
Yeah. It takes work. It takes work.
It takes a lot of work.
It's the best work you'll ever do.
That's exactly right.
Well, Tom, I really appreciate your time. I know you got a busy schedule. There are other things you need to do, and I don't want to keep you too long, but this was a fabulous conversation. I think we covered quite a bit of ground and hopefully filled in some holes for some of our respective audiences. As we conclude for today, where can people find any of your work, and last thoughts you have for the audience today?
That's a challenge because I don't post work.
Okay.
I wrote a book 7 years ago that was purely fiction. And as I found out, that purely fiction was actually real. Some of it was actually real and I didn't know it. But I'm thinking about putting up a website or going on Rumble. Because most of the things I've done have been in the last year. I've been on 3 panels and 1 individual interview. And that one individual thing just exploded. And I'm going on another panel at the end of the month, and I'm on your show today. So I'm thinking about putting all that up, but I haven't done it yet. My wife says, don't do it. Too many people get to know you and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's relatively safe. I know Derek very well, Derek Johnson. And he's got all kinds of stuff up there. So I'm thinking about it, but I haven't done anything. They can email me if they have a question
Okay.
at tlennox99@gmail.com. And I have a Gab thing, but I don't have anything posted there. But yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Well, we'll put up your email for in case anybody wants to. I'm sure people want to get a hold of you, so we'll do that to facilitate some interaction. And really appreciate your knowledge. It's been a privilege. Folks, as you know, one of our primary sponsors for foreign currencies, it will be listed here below the video for all the different countries and provinces, as you know well. We'll leave that link for your description for your perusal. Tom Lennox, thank you for joining the podcast. Thank you, sir, for your knowledge. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate that. And we pray that this blesses our respective audiences well and fills in some gaps and gives some peace and clarity. And we pray you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, John.
Thank you,
Take
sir.
care.
Take care.
Bye.